Daf Yomi, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 43a. Top of the page with the words Uvenei Yisrael, Asu Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. And the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. Elameata Vayirgmin also avin my avid le hahumi baya lekedetanya. Vayirgemu oto ba'aven oto velo bechisuto. Aven she'im made be'even achas yatza. The Gemara asks, if that is so, what do they do with the words in the verse, and they stoned him with a stone? These words appear to be superfluous, as even without them we would know that God's instructions to stone the blasphemer were implemented. What then do they serve to teach? The Gemara answers, that phrase is necessary for that which is taught in a Braita. The verse states, and they stoned him with a stone. The word him teaches that they stoned him alone, while he was naked, but not while he was in his clothing. The verse uses the singular term stone, aven, rather than the plural term stones, avanim, to teach that if the condemned man died after being struck with one stone, the court has fulfilled its obligation. V'itzrich lemichtav aven, v'itzrich lemichtav avanim, di'i katav rachmana aven havyamina, heich delo meis bechada, lo neiseh acharisi v'niktale. Katav rachmana avanim, v'i kasav rachmana avanim, havamina mi'ikara neisi tarti, kasav rachmana aven. The Gemara notes, and it was necessary to write, with regard to the blasphemer, that they stoned him with a stone, in the singular, and it was necessary to write with regard to the man who gathered sticks on Shabbat, that they stoned him with stones. Numbers 15:36, in the plural. As had the merciful one written only stone, I would say that where the condemned man did not die after being struck with one stone, they do not bring other stones and kill him with them. Therefore, the merciful one writes stones, and the merciful one had the merciful one written only stones, I would say that from the outset they should bring 2 or more stones. Therefore, the merciful one writes stone. Ilu lo ne'emar k'amar v'achi k'amar. Ilu lo ne'emar k'ra, הייתי אומר גזיר השווה. עכשיו שנאמר קרא, גזיר השווה לא צריך. The Gemara raises an objection to Rav Papa's derivation. But this Tana of the Braita cited above said, it is stated here and it is stated elsewhere, thereby basing his derivation on a verbal analogy between the verse concerning the blasphemer and the verse concerning the bulls brought as sin offerings that are burned. How then can Rav Papa and Amora disagree and derive Yalacha directly from the verse dealing with the blasphemer? The Gemara answers, according to Rav Papa, the Tana of the Braita said, had it not been stated, and this is what he is saying, had a verse not been stated from which it can be directly derived that the condemned man is stoned outside all 3 camps, I would have said that this can be learned by way of a verbal analogy. But now that such a verse has been stated, the verbal analogy is not needed. Rav Ashi Amar Moshe Hecha Havi Yasiv B'machne Levia V'Amar Le Rachmana Hotzi Es HaMikalel chutz l'machane Levia, el michutz l'machane, chutz l'machane Yisrael, v'yotzi es mekalo la'asiyah. Rav Ashi said, the location of the place of stoning can be directly derived from the verse discussing the blasphemer, but in a slightly different manner. Where was Moses sitting when the matter of the blasphemer was brought before him? In the Levite camp. And the merciful one said to him, take out him who has cursed. Leviticus 24:14, indicating that he should be taken outside the Levite camp into the Israelite camp. And God continued in that verse, outside the camp, which is an additional command that he should be removed even further to outside the Israelite camp. And the latter verse, which says, and they brought him that had cursed out of the camp, and the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. Leviticus 24:23 teaches us about the implementation of God's instructions, meaning that the children of Israel did, in fact, carry out his command. Asiya v'hedyeksi behu v'nei Yisrael asu kasher tiva Hashem es Moshe ahu miboy lehad smicha v'had lechia. The Gemara raises an objection. The Gemara raises an... Wow, this is logged off. We'll do two parts. Where were we? The Gemara raises an objection. Okay. The implementation of God's instructions is written explicitly in this context. Asiya b'hedek sibu b'nei Yisrael asu kasher tzivah es Hashem es Moshe ahumi boyle ksiv had tzmicha v'had lachdichia. The implementation of God's instructions is written explicitly in this context, as it is stated in the continuation of the verse, and the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. The Gemara answers that verse is necessary to teach us that not only was the condemned man taken outside 3 camps and stoned, but the rest of God's instructions were also fulfilled. The instructions relate to the placing of the witness's hands upon the head of the condemned man, as it is stated, and let all that heard him place their hands upon his head, Leviticus 24:14, and to the witness's pushing of the condemned man from a platform the height of 2 stories. Amru le Rabbanan Ravashi Ledida Kohani Hotzi Dichtivi Biparim Nisrafim Mai Darashte Bahu Kashya. Okay. The sages said to Rav Ashi, according to you, that the expression take out by itself means outside the camp, and outside the camp means outside an additional camp. What do you learn from all these instances of take out that are written with regard to the bulls brought as sin offerings that are burned? According to your explanation, there are many superfluous phrases in the verses. The Gemara comments, indeed, this is difficult with regard to the opinion of Rav Ashi. Okay. Echad omed v'chulei Amar Rav Huna pshita li echad even sheniskal ba ve'echad eitz shenitla bo ve'echad sayav sheneharag bo ve'echad sudar shenechnak bo kulan mishel tzibur ma'tayma demedidei lo amrinan le zil v'lesi v'likto nafshi. The Mishnah teaches that one man stands at the entrance to the court with cloths in his hand, ready to signal to the court agents leading the condemned man to his execution that some doubt has been raised with with respect to the latter's guilt. Rav Huna says, "It is obvious to me that the stone with which the condemned man is stoned, and the tree on which his corpse is hung after his execution, or the sword with which he is killed, or the scarf with which he is strangled, all of these come from the property of the community." What is the reason for this? We do not tell the condemned man to go and bring these items from his own property and effectively kill himself. Boy Rav Huna Sudar Shemanifin Bo Visul Shiraz Mamidan Michel Mihu Kevand de Hatsela Dide Medidehu O Dilma Kevand de Beidina Mechayvin de Membadle Hatsala Medidihu. Okay. Rav Huna raised a dilemma with regard to the cloth that is waved and the horse that races off after the court agents to stop the latter from carrying out the execution. From whose property do they come? That of the condemned man or that of the community? The Gemara explains the two sides of the dilemma. Since they are needed to save the man being led to his execution, these items should be taken from his property, or perhaps, since the court is obligated to take all possible measures to save him from death, they should be taken from them, meaning the community. Vitu Hadam Rav Chia bar Rav Ashi Amar Rav Chizda Hayotzi leharik mashkenoso kort shel levuna bekos shel yain kedei shetitaref dato shneimar tenu shechar leoved v'yain lemari nefesh. Vitanya Nashim Yikaros Shebirushalayim Hayom Etnadvos Umevios Osan Lo Hitnadvu Nashim Yikaros Mishel Mi V'havadai Mistavra Mishel Tzibur Kevan Nichtiv Tenu Medidhu. And furthermore, another question is raised along similar lines with regard to that which Rav Chia bar Ashi says, that Rav Chizda says, the court gives one who is being led out to be killed a grain of frankincense in a cup of wine in order to confuse his mind and thereby minimize his suffering from the fear of his impending death. As it is stated, give strong drink to him that is ready to perish, and wine to the bitter in soul. Proverbs 31:6. And it is taught in Braita, the prominent women of Jerusalem would donate this drink and bring it to those being led out to be killed. The question is, if these prominent women did not donate this drink, from whom is it taken? The Gemara answers with regard to this question, it is certainly reasonable that this drink should be taken from the community, as it is written, give strong drink in the plural, indicating that it should come from them, meaning the community. Boy benevracha bar Huna Rav Sheshes Amar Echad ben Tamidim Yesh li lelamed lav schus v'nishtake shtate mahu benapach Rav Sheshes biadeh nishtatak afilu echad besof ha'olam nami chasam lo kamar hacha kamar mai. Rav Achabar Huna asked Rav Sheshet, if one of the students sitting before the judges said, I can teach a reason to acquit him, and he became mute and cannot explain himself, what is the halach in such a case? Does the court take heed of his words, or do they disregard him? Rav Sheshet waved his hands in scorn and said, if the student became mute, the court does not pay attention to him, as were the court themselves. Were the court to concern themselves with what he said, they would have to be concerned, even that perhaps there is someone at the end of the world who can propose an argument in the condemned man's favor. The Gemara rejects this argument. The cases are not similar. There, no one said that he had a reason to acquit the condemned man. Here, the student already said that he had a reason to acquit the condemned man, the question therefore is appropriate. What is the halacha in such a case? Tashima. We'll come to hear proof from Braisa. Damar of Yossi bar Chanina, Echad min haTalmidim shezika v'met, ro'in oto ki'ilu chai ve'omed b'mkomo. Zika in, lo zika lo. The Gemara suggests, come in here and answer. Rav Yossi bar Chanina says, in a case where there was one of the students who argued to acquit the defendant and then died, the court views him as if he were alive and standing in his place and voting to acquit the defendant. The implication is that if he argued to acquit the defendant and explained his reasoning, yes, the court counts his vote as if he were still alive. But if he did not actually argue to acquit the defendant, but only said that he wished to propose such an argument, his vote is not counted as though he were still alive. Zika, Pshitali, Amar, Tiboilach. The Gemara rejects this proof. If the student argued to acquit the defendant, it is obvious to me that he should be counted among those favoring acquittal. But if he only says that he wishes to propose such an argument, let the dilemma be raised whether or not he should be regarded as having presented a convincing argument in favor of acquittal. The question is left unresolved. It says it's unresolved, but I don't see any teiku here. The question is left unresolved, but it's not a teiku. Zika pshitali amar tibayla. Okay, afilu pam rishona shniya, v'tanya pam rishona shniya, bein sheyesh mamash bidvarav, bein she'ein mamash bidvarav machzir oso, v'kan ve'elach im yesh mamash bidvarav machzir oso, ve'ein mamash bidvarav ein machzir oso. The Mishnah teaches that even he, the condemned man himself, says, even if he, the condemned man himself, says, I can teach a reason to acquit myself, he is returned to the courthouse even 4 or 5 times, provided that there is substance in his words. The Gemara asks, and is the halacha that there must be substance to his words, even the first and second time that the condemned man says that he can teach a reason to acquit himself? But isn't it taught in Braita, the first and second time that he says that he can teach a reason to acquit himself, they return to the courthouse to consider whether there is substance to his statement or there is no substance to his statement. From this point forward, if there is substance to his statement, they return him to the courthouse. But if there is no substance to his statement, they do not return him. This appears to contradict the Mishnah. Amar Papa, Targumami Pam, Shnia Ve'elach. Okay. Rav Papa said, explained that the Mishnah's ruling applies only from after the second time forward. From that point on, we examine whether there is substance to his word. The Gemara asks, how do we know? Minayadai, Amar Abaye, Dimasirle, Zugal Rabban, V'ikama Mishmizarav in Ilolo. The Gemara asks, how do we know whether or not there is substance to his words? Abaye said, if the condemned man has already been returned twice to the courthouse, we send a pair of rabbis with him to evaluate his claim. If they find that there is substance to his statement, yes, he is returned once again to the courthouse. If not, he is not returned. The Gemara asks, but why not send a pair of rabbis with him from the outset, even the first time, and have them make an initial assessment of his claim? The Gemara answers, since a man facing execution is frightened by the thought of his impending death, he is not able to say all that he has to say, and perhaps out of fear he will be confused and not provide a substantial reason to overturn his verdict. Therefore, the first 2 times he is returned to the courthouse without an initial examination of his arguments. Once he has already been returned on 2 occasions, the court allows no further delay, and they send 2 rabbis to evaluate his claim before returning him a 3rd time. And let's see if we have. I think we're going to do part 2, even though it's a smaller part. But